could live without always translating themselves, allowing themselves to be, as so often happens, stunned by the realism of new image created and fixed by an artist, a realism in the sense of its largest and narrowest meanings, a creation responding at once to the many varieties of the intuition of the real that reside in all conscious beings. My conviction rests on the notion that art is not just a source of disinterested human enjoyments, but the personal utility of most privileged, or simply an efficient way to achieve man's ennoblement and psychic development, but that it is instead the vital strength of a epic window, as vast and productive socially as any of the insights generated by scientific thought or ethical intuition. I believe aesthetic emotion to be a psychic phenomenon capable of appeasing the sharpest concern of our being, doubts regarding the reality of the phenomenal world. For this reason, the aesthetic emotion may be considered the creator of our intimate, personal, lyrical certitude. In truth, I feel everything that has weighed so heavily on human thought since the beginning of consciousness, sources of both cruel martyrdom and vivid glory, God, immortality, eternal order, the beyond, all would vanish and lose their vital sense if light could be shed on man's organic doubt concerning the objectivity of the world that surrounds him, of the reality of this, or, looking at it more closely, of the relations between the moi with the non-moi, me and not me, of thinking with the thought, of the subject with the object. We attach ourselves to sensible reality as if it was not transient and perishable, but rather steady and eternal. In this manner, what was conceived as passing comes to feel lasting and deeply real. This is how we are brought, by a process that is not rational, but total, lured by the force of habitually seeing one vital cause in another, to first believe in an extra appreciable reality, whose mystery will soon be uncovered, and then in the reality, closely related one to another, of the sensible world that offers itself as an exact translation of the unified real, like a pure symbol. Whether this attitude taken in the face of the world's enigma is justified or not, what does it matter? It is enough to note here that will, the permanent worrywart, never stops, throughout the aesthetic history of humanity, trying to penetrate this enigma, and to penetrate it precisely by co-opting the life, so to speak, of the sensible world. It is only in this way that this world can be fixed, or, in other words, rendered artificially stable, and the mechanism of this action, this constant effort to seize, is reminiscent of the successive appearance of organs in struggles of the biological world. It is through the atmosphere of a master that one begins to glean the specific irradiation produced by the mystical experience of diving into the void, an experience that not only differentiates one atmosphere completely from that of another, but also determines every feature of the artist's personal technique, an effect also of this plunge, enveloping every gestation of style in an atmosphere of mysterious individuality, mysterious in the same way as, for example, the evolution and conservation of a character. Great souls in their opinionated effort, solitary and fateful in their attempts to fix the fleeting enigma. It is an instructive effort, grave and worthy enough to be considered seriously. For who knows whether all this effort, that is, the sum quantity of this effort, will not one day be proclaimed identical to the thing it so doggedly pursues. Yes, one can take the joy of the aesthetic emotion as a point of departure for hypothetical research into metaphysics by bashing the theory of knowledge on the certitude of the aesthetic emotion. Since the motivation of my research, reconciliation, the passage from subject to object, is the same for aesthetic investigation as it is for purely scientific investigation, and since the desired result is also the same, a supposed reconciliation, a passage supposedly crossed, it follows that if one can achieve this result by way of the beautiful, it would be just as precisely scientific, as worthy and as imperative as the one that pure science achieves by its own methods. What is left for me now in order to enhance my precision and leave out nothing is a curious rapprochement between the two reflections that, it seems to me, most accurately portray the intuitive outlines of this interior movement of life. Indeed, One must strip the intelligible of its veils, those conventional human complications and shimmering themes that appear so logically pleasant to our full sensory receptiveness, so that in complete nudity it may be seen again as mobile or immobile, as the development to the inside of movement, as the movement of movement, the mobility of movement, that is, as motivity. This is best portrayed as an image of reconciliation, since the union or naturally experienced solitary transition of passage memory consciousness is but the passage of the sensible that has yet to be assimilated, the subject, the moi, to that which has already been assimilated, the object, the non-moi, and further, it is to this union that Bergson's thought guarantees a certain objectivity. Just as in art, there are only two unique ways by which the Hung can appear, so there are also only two means of translating it, expressionism and impressionism. These are two well-marketed aesthetic forces and their harmonious union, split equally between expression and impression. The object and the subject correlates with the present of lyric certitude. The history of aesthetic evolution surrounds the struggle, of the successive hegemony, of one or the other of these two tendency directions, and of their temporary union, their aesthetic reconciliation that is so fertile in its generative output. With each global cycle of reconciliation, the struggle accelerates the rhythm of the movement and brings one cycle closer to the next, ultimately rendering the formula for reconciliation more stable and transparent.